Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show for Monster Monday for August 9th, 2021. We will start at the top of the hour. Between now and then, got a little distortion in my voice. Been dealing with kind of a summer cold and having to take care of that stuff. There we go. There we go. That's better. All right. So I want to let you know, remind you guys that during August, all of our pre-stream and break music is being brought to us by Prestream Hits. Prestream Hits is a new copyright-free music service. You can find it on all of the major streaming platforms, whether you use Spotify, Apple Music, or any of the others that are out there. You can find it. They create music by streamers for streamers, and you won't get any copyright hits on your YouTube videos, live streams, your Twitch streams, your TikTok videos, wherever you as a cool kid are posting your videos online. So check them out. Prestream Hits over at www.prestreamhits.com. And also, as always, want to remind you about the OG Mo over at tabletopbellhop.com. Mo is the original gangsta, the OG, when it comes to all things tabletop games. Party games, board games, tabletop RPGs, card games, any kind of thing that you want. You can find the games themselves and all of the news, reviews, conventions around games, people talking about games, communities of people that want to play games, creators who are making games, and game developers and people testing the games and giving reviews of upcoming games, and also people creating all kinds of content around the games. So podcasts, news, live streams, whatever. Go check them out at the tabletopbellhop.com. All right. Hey, Fragilitis. Good to see you on the stream. All right, we will be getting started in about a minute. Meanwhile, enjoy the music from Prestream Hits. All right, okay, we're gonna go ahead and move this slate a little bit, and welcome everybody. It is Monday, it is 8 p.m. I am DM Gallibond, and that must mean it is time for Monster Monday. And tonight, on Monster Monday for August 9th, 2021, we are going to be looking at a very special and very interesting kind of undead in D&D, and that is the Revenant. Now, a lot of people First time they heard of a Revenant might have been a few years ago in that Leonardo DiCaprio movie when that came out. And the Revenant is a creature from folklore. That film and the D&D monster both kind of take the inspiration from the folklore Revenant. And we're going to talk a little bit about why the Revenant is such an interesting creature to have in D&D, and why you really want to think as a DM before you just go, oh, that looks cool, and throw one into the campaign, because there really kind of has to be a story reason for a Revenant to be there. All right, so, and that story may or may not directly impact your campaign, but it is going to have an influence on the campaign one way or the other. So, we'll just say it that way. All right, so let's take a look at the description of the monster from D&D. Now, as we always do, we look at artwork out of the D&D source books down the ages, and this is the image of the Revenant that we get from the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual. But the Revenant actually appeared first, all the way back in Basic D&D. And the description we got back then is that this horror appears to be a zombie, though it walks at a faster rate. It never carries weapons. Okay, so it kind of looks like a zombie, walks faster, doesn't carry weapons. All right, then in 1st edition and 2nd edition, used exactly the same verbiage to describe it. The Revenant appears as a spectral, decayed version of its appearance at the time of its death. Its pallid skin is drawn tightly over its bones. The flesh is cold and clammy. The sunken eyes are dull and heavy-lidded, but when the Revenant faces his intended victim, the eyes blaze with unnatural intensity. The Revenant bears an aura of sadness, anger, and determination. And then 3rd edition, we have a very similar description of the monster out of 3rd edition. A Revenant looks like a decaying and ravaged version of the murdered person at the time of their death. Skin drawn tightly against the bones, open wounds, clammy flesh, and eyes grown lifeless until facing their killer, when they blaze with unnatural light. Okay, so we now know a little bit about the purpose of a Revenant. From 3rd edition, it would indicate that a Revenant is always someone who has been murdered, and the purpose seems to be they are going after the person that killed them. All right, this is why I say if you're going to use one in your campaign, you've got to kind of think about that before you just throw one in there. All right, now we're going to look at the lore of a Revenant. And whereas we look at the description from the oldest to the newest editions, we start with the newest editions and look backwards when we look at the lore. So this is an image of a Revenant from 5th edition. And in case it's not obvious, the Revenant is the one that has the part of a noose still around its neck. So Revenants are vengeful trackers. The Revenant knows the distance to and direction of any creature against which it seeks revenge, even if the creature and the Revenant are on different planes of existence. If the creature being tracked by the Revenant dies, the Revenant knows. So now this is one where when you get a Revenant on your trail, you can't escape it even by going to another plane of existence, because it knows where you are. Now, it doesn't mean it can get to you, but it is tracking you, and it knows, and it's stalking you, and it's coming after you relentlessly. Okay, a Revenant possesses most of the abilities it had in life, including weapon use and magical abilities. Its alignment changes to neutral, which can threaten the class abilities of certain characters. Revenants who were formerly arcane spellcasters do not keep their familiars when they have become revenants. Clerics and paladins who had positive energy powers, such as turning undead and switching such as turning undead and switching out spells for curing spells, change to users of negative energy, rebuking undead and inflicting wounds instead. So that's what we get from 3rd edition. And then in 2nd edition, we learn this curious factor. Although it's undead, the Revenant is motivated entirely by self-will. Therefore, as it is not inherently evil, it is not affected by holy water, holy or unholy symbols, or other religious paraphernalia. It cannot be turned by priest, nor can it be raised or resurrected. Hey, Amish! Great to see you. Thanks for joining tonight. So it's an undead, but which means that it shares some traits with other undead. But because it has this self-motivated will, it does not share other traits that are common to most undead. And here we see a picture of the Revenant from 3rd edition. And we talk about the creature type. All creatures in 5th edition D&D have to have a type, and this one is undead. So undead are once living creatures brought to a horrifying state of undeath through the practice of necromantic magic or some unholy curse. Undead include walking corpses such as vampires and zombies, as well as bodily spirits such as ghosts and specters. Well, the Revenant falls into the walking corpse category of undead, and it's not really a practice of necromantic magic. And is it an unholy curse? It might be an unholy curse, because the Revenant cannot get any rest. The Revenant is driven to stalk, hunt, and pursue its murderer until justice has been served. All right. So now we're going to go and we're going to take a look at the Revenant throughout the ages. And to do this, we are going to start by going over to the Rules Cyclopedia, where the Revenant first appeared. Now, the Revenant, it's interesting. We talk about undead, and we talk about how it's an undead corpse. But in original D&D or basic D&D, it was classified as a spirit monster. Hey, Dorsafir, great to see you. The Revenant has a -3 armor class, has 18 hit dice, and all those asterisks mean that it has about 4 more special abilities than most 18 hit die monsters. So that means it's 18 hit dice on steroids. Has a movement of 120 feet out of combat or 40 feet in combat. 2 claws and a bite. Deals 2d4 for each claw, 1d4 plus 2 for the bite, and all attacks that it has are poison. It saves as an 18th level fighter. Has a 13 intelligence, and it's chaotic alignment. Because remember, back in Basic Edition, D&D was so poor they could only afford 3 alignments. Lawful, neutral, and chaotic. Alright, so the horror appears to be a zombie. It walks at a faster rate. Doesn't carry weapons. It roams the night in search of victims. Now, this is kind of... This original version of the Revenant doesn't seem to be driven single-mindedly the way later editions of the Revenant are. So it searches for victims, surprising them 50% of the time. It can leap once per turn to a 60-foot range. When both surprising and leaping on a victim, its 3 attacks all hit. No attack rolls are needed, causing normal damage and 3 separate saving throws versus poison. And once per night, the Revenant can summon 1d4 specters to come to its aid. They are resistant to turning attempts. If any D, which means destroyed, turn is indicated, the Revenant may make a saving throw versus spells. If successful, the attempt has no effect. A turn result gives no saving throw, but the Revenant will return in 1d4 turns. And again, that's 10 to 40 minutes. Revenants are always encountered singly. And that's really all we learn about the Revenant in Basic Edition. So it's just kind of like, okay, it's like an overpowered zombie, basically. But then in First Edition, the Revenant appeared in the Fiend Folio. It wasn't in the Monster Manual. It was the Fiend Folio, which was the resource produced by TSR from the UK. And it's very rare, has an armor class of 10. So you remember the first or the Basic Edition had an armor class of -3, means it was extremely hard to hit. The Revenant in First Edition has an armor class of 10, very easy to hit. And instead of having 18 hit dice, it only gets 8 hit dice, and it only has 1 attack. 2d8 damage for that attack. It can paralyze its enemies. And then under exceptional circumstances, those who have died a violent death may return from beyond the grave to wreak vengeance on their killer as a Revenant. There are few who can make this journey to do so. A dead character must have a wisdom or intelligence greater than 16 and a constitution of 18. All their characteristics must sum up to a 90 or more, and if both these criteria are met, the chance of the character becoming a Revenant after death is 5%. So, although undead, Revenant is motivated by sheer self-will, therefore it's not inherently evil, so yada yada yada, all those other things won't affect it. Now, even if a Revenant is dismembered, its limbs will continue to function independently as though guided by the same mind. Like a troll, it has regenerative properties which cause the limbs to slither together, reunite, and recreate the Revenant. It can also regenerate 3 hit points of damage per round even after it's destroyed, unless it's destroyed by burning. And it is immune to acid and to any kind of gas attack. So the process of decay of the corpse has only slightly been attenuated. After 3 to 6 months of rebirth, the corpse will decompose rapidly. The spirit of the Revenant will be forced to return to the plane from whence it came. And its sole purpose is to wreak vengeance on its killer together with any person or persons who aided his killer in the act. Though it will never stop to attack anyone else except in self-defense, it'll stop at nothing to achieve its purpose, being able to locate its intended prime victim wherever they may be. And the mode of attack is to lock its claw-like hands around the victim's throat and strangle it, doing 2d8 hit points per round and not releasing the grip until the victim or the Revenant is dead. And so, the Revenant can also stare into the killer's eyes. That person must make a saving throw against magic or be paralyzed with terror for 2d4 rounds. Has all the abilities it had before death, though it's a creature with 8 hit dice, whatever experience level is previously attained, and always of neutral alignment. So then creature presents a pale corpse-like appearance, pallid skin, blah blah blah. And if the character who became the Revenant died a particularly violent death, it may be unable to reoccupy its former body when it becomes a Revenant. In such case, the spirit will occupy any available freshly dead corpse. Revenant's new body may even be of the opposite gender from the original character. However, its killer and its active associates, if present, will always see the Revenant in its former body, while others around will see it as it is if they had not been involved in the killing. And When the Revenant has completed its mission by killing all its intended victims, it will immediately disintegrate and will never return again. So now in 2nd edition, we see that not much has changed from 1st edition. Still armor class 10, 8 hit dice, movement speed of 90, 2d8 damage, and paralysis. Okay, now here's some interesting things from the ecology of the Revenant. Revenants give murder victims a chance to avenge their own murders. They pursue their goals alone without desire or need for allies. However, if the Revenant faces a powerful foe able to destroy the Revenant's new form, the Revenant may decide to use adventurers as pawns in its quest. So this brings up one of the possible ways that a Revenant could cross paths with your campaign, and might be just the kind of delicious thing to throw a moral quandary to your party, especially if you have some people who are sympathetic for getting revenge for an unjust killing, and a bunch of goody two-shoes lawful good types that think that justice always ought to be served through the courts. So that's a interesting possibility for using it in your campaigns. Now, in 3rd edition, the Revenant. Hey, Gloria Zote. No, we are not discussing D&D races. We are discussing the Revenant, which is a type of undead monster. So, in 3rd edition, we don't get a Revenant as a separate monster. We actually get the Revenant as a template. And this is something that we are going to talk about again when we talk about using Revenants in your campaign. So, Revenants are undead avengers returned from the grave to track down and kill their murderers. And so the description, very much similar to what we have seen in the previous editions of the game. But notice in this source book, which is the Monsters of Faerun Monster Compendium from 3rd edition, we get a template that you can apply to any humanoid creature type to create a Revenant. So the hit dice of the creature increase to D12, and a Revenant retains all the special attacks of the base creature and also gains abilities described below. So Vengeful Strike, a melee attack it makes against its killer, inflicts an additional 1d10 damage. Paralyzing Gaze, the first time Revenant confronts its killer, must make a will save, DC 10 plus half the Revenant's hit dice or levels. The special qualities retains all the special qualities of the base creature, also gains undead qualities listed below. So damage reduction, Revenants have damage reduction 5, which means that any damage you do to it is reduced by 5 unless, and the /+1 means unless you are using a +1 or better magic weapon. Turning immunity, it can't be turned by or rebuked by clerics and paladins. Regeneration, all damage except fire is regenerated at the rate of 3 hit points per round. Fire damage is not regenerated. And it's immune to acid, gas, cold, electricity, polymorph, and mind-influencing attacks. And find the guilty, so long as Revenants and Killer are on the same plane of existence. Now, in 3rd edition, they say on the same plane. By 5th edition, it doesn't matter what plane it's on. It still knows the distance and where the killer is. Revenant will know which direction its killer can be found and how far away. Depending on magical abilities of the base creature, this extraordinary sense may even work across planar boundaries. Okay, Revenant gains +4 to strength and +2 to charisma, but has no constitution score since it's undead. And then they give you an example of creating a Revenant from a 7th level Elven Sorcerer as the base creature. So you have, all of the magic items that it had, the spell casting ability that the sorcerer had, all the feats, the saving throws, the skills, and then all of these other traits. And notice that the Revenant keeps the elven traits, but also adds the undead traits. So that's kind of a very interesting way you can create a Revenant by stapling this template onto a base creature. And I'm going to argue that in 5th edition, this is something you want to keep in mind depending on what level your party is, if and when you decide a Revenant is right to introduce into your campaign. So, their Revenant was not in 4th edition, or at least it's not in any of the 4th edition source books that I own, because I don't own all the source books from all of the editions of the game. So in 5th edition, Revenant forms from the soul of a mortal who met a cruel and undeserved fate, claws its way back to the world to seek revenge against the one who wronged it. It reclaims its own mortal body and superficially resembles a zombie. The eyes burn with resolve and flare in the presence of its adversary. And if the Revenant's original body is destroyed or otherwise unavailable, the spirit of the Revenant will enter another humanoid corpse. Regardless of the body the Revenant uses as a vessel, its adversary always recognizes. And then in 5th edition, there is a time limit imposed of 1 year. So the Revenant has only 1 year to exact revenge. When its adversary dies or the Revenant fails to kill its adversary before time runs out, it crumbles to dust and its soul fades in the afterlife. If its foe is too powerful for the Revenant to destroy on its own, it seeks worthy allies to help fulfill its quest. And Divine Justice. No magic can hide a creature pursued by a Revenant, which always knows the direction and distance, even when it's on a different plane. In cases where a Revenant seeks revenge against more than one adversary, it pursues them one at a time, starting with a creature that dealt it the killing blow. If the Revenant's body is destroyed, its soul flies forth to seek out a new corpse in which to resume its hunt. So you can encounter a Revenant, kill it, or destroy its body, and then it may show up later in a different body, although if you are the target, you will always see the person that was unjustly killed, the person who is coming after you. Now, in 5th edition, the Revenant is a medium undead, neutral alignment. It has an armor class of 13, 136 hit points. It's got a lot of the basic, undead template information on it. It also adds regeneration, so similar to a vampire spawn or a vampire, regains 10 hit points per round. Rejuvenation. When the Revenant's body is destroyed, soul lingers after 24 hours. It inhabits and animates another humanoid corpse on the same plane and regains all the hit points. And while the soul is bodiless, a wish spell can be used to force the soul to go to the afterlife and not return. So it's immune to being turned. The Vengeful Tracker, multi-attack. It makes fist attacks, and then once it makes those fist attacks, it can do a grapple. So those fist attacks deal 2d6 plus 4 bludgeoning damage, and if the target is a creature against which the Revenant has sworn vengeance, there's an extra 4d6 bludgeoning damage. And then the Vengeful Glare. Target must make a DC 15 Wisdom save or be paralyzed until the Revenant deals damage to it, or until the end of the Revenant's next turn. Alright, so those are the mechanical features of the Revenant throughout the ages. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to go back and we're going to look a little bit more at the Revenant in your campaign. Now, this image here is one of the images from the Fiend Folio for the Revenant in first edition. So, as we can see here, the Revenant is strangling this guy, even though these other guys have cut off its arm. It's still, that severed limb is still strangling its victim. So, in 5th edition, the Revenant, because of its challenge rating, is appropriate for use with parties anywhere from level 3 to level 7. So mid to upper tier 1 to lower tier 2. If you put a Revenant against a party of 3rd level adventurers, it's going to be a hard encounter. And if you have a party of level 4 adventurers, it'll be a medium encounter. If you want to make that a hard encounter, you can add a Spectre. And why would you add a Spectre? Well, that goes back to the original idea of the Revenant back in Basic D&D, where once per day it could summon several Spectres to fight with it. For a party level 5 to 7, it becomes an easy encounter. And if you want to make it a hard encounter for a level 7 party, then instead of adding 1 Spectre, add 7 Spectres to the fight. And that will make it a hard encounter. So this is a monster that you can use as it's written within these levels. The problem is, at least in my view of using a Revenant and remaining true to its lore, there are such limited use cases that the chances your party is going to earn, if you will, having a Revenant on their trail, and you only limit that to what they do somewhere between level 3 and level 7, you're really kind of limiting your options there. So this is why we look at the old editions and why we look at that template, and why we're going to talk about how you can create Revenants of different challenge ratings. All right. If you are a player and your DM throws a Revenant against your party, what are some tactics you can use for fighting against the Revenant? Well, first of all, use fire or radiant damage. Revenant is an undead, but it cannot be turned. It's also immune to several other kinds of spells that will affect undead. However, fire prevents it from regenerating health. The other thing to remember about a Revenant is it never stops coming. As long as the Revenant is within its period of vengeance 1 year from its death, it will never stop coming after the target of its vengeance. And if the foe it seeks vengeance against is too powerful for it to destroy alone, it will seek the aid of allies. So you may face the Revenant. You may also discover that the Revenant has friends. Maybe other people that you as a party have ticked off, and the Revenant has said, aha, these might be nice allies for me. Okay, now if you're a DM, what are some tactics and situations for using a Revenant? So, Revenant should not be used lightly. This is an enemy that won't stop pursuing the one against whom it has sworn vengeance, so it could either force a long period of downtime while the party waits out the year in a secure location, or it will become a recurring plot point until a year of game time has passed. So that's why I say you want to be careful when you throw a Revenant against your party, because not only A, do they really have to earn a Revenant coming after them, but B, you're going to totally be interrupting your own story arc as long as this Revenant is still coming after the party. So if the Revenant is pursuing a PC that is in a party that's too difficult for a CR5 monster to threaten, it'll seek allies. So as a DM, you need to decide what appropriate worthy allies would be and how the Revenant will deploy these allies in its pursuit of a target of its vengeance. And finally, remember that the Revenant will use any available corpse to continue its mission, so PCs may not have time to get even a short rest between when they destroy the original corpse and when another corpse arrives to continue the monster's quest of revenge. So now, you remember, the Revenant is an undead. So your party might think, oh, okay, yeah, that's that guy we accidentally killed back in that town. We thought he was guilty, but oops, turns out he was innocent. We killed him anyway, and now he's mad and he's coming after us. Hey, guess what? There's this church over there. We'll destroy the Revenant and we'll run into the church. Not so fast, my friends. Guess what the church has out back? It has a churchyard. And because the Revenant, even though it's undead, it's not evil. There's nothing to keep that spirit from going out to the churchyard, inhabiting a corpse in the churchyard, and then coming right back in the church to attack the PCs again. So you could basically not only would you have the Revenant continuing to be on your case, you might piss off the entire town because every single grave in the churchyard is disrupted by the corpse coming out of it and going into the church to attack the people that are trying to take shelter there. So that would be a really good way to just give a big screw you to your players if you are that kind of DM. Now, I would expect that if you take that sort of adversarial bent with your players, either they really like that sort of thing, or you should be prepared for some repercussions from that, because they're probably never going to trust you again if you do that to them. Okay, so where would you place Revenants in a campaign? Now, as written, in terms of level, a Revenant should appear as the party nears the upper limit of Tier 1 and lower levels of Tier 2. So be a good monster to represent an NPC that the party has slain unjustly or through lack of sufficient care. So perhaps an innocent person was accused or slain by a party member when they got a bit reckless in a fight or when pursuing an enemy. Or if we go back to the Rakshasa, which we talked about last week, if you go back in the playlist and look at last week's monster, that monster, which has the ability to sort of manipulate people and get them to sort of go after people that it wants them to, and might perhaps even hire the PCs and tell the PCs the story about how this evil person over there is just doing all these bad things, and get them to go after and kill that evil person. Well, maybe that evil person isn't really evil after all. Maybe that person is really good. And the Rakshasa just wants something very valuable that person has. And so gets the party to go do its dirty work. Well, now that person has been killed unjustly by the party. So guess who the Revenant is going after? It's not going after the Rakshasa who called for the hit. It's going after the party members who executed the hit. All right. So that's one way that you could use a Revenant in your party if you're going to use it in the time period that it's, or the level area that it's written. Might be best to save this for a time when the party was particularly cavalier and showed no remorse or made no effort to repent when they clearly erred from a moral or ethical principle related to their background or backstory. Now, I also don't think if you're running a campaign where the party is an evil party, it may not make sense to throw a Revenant at an evil party for going and doing the kind of things that evil parties do. But then again, if they're an evil party that has sort of a code and they violate that code, well, it might make them fair game for a Revenant. Because if you think about the reason Revenants exist and why they're in the game, an evil campaign, every time you turn around, you could have Revenants coming after you. Because, when you're in that town, you killed those innocent people over there. When you're in that town, you killed those innocent people over there. All in the name of, either pursuing whatever mercenary goals you were being sent on or pursuing your own ends as an evil party. So that's why I think one of the reasons why I say you need to put a little thought into when you're actually going to use a Revenant. Now, another one of my players was talking about a time in one of their games where a Revenant's mission crossed paths with the party. The Revenant in this case was not after one of the party members, but the Revenant was after somebody that the party was already had kind of a grudge against. And so the Revenant came and recruited the party as worthy allies to help it go and hunt down this target that it was pursuing, against which it had vengeance. Now, depending on your party, if you get some zombie-looking undead just sort of walking into camp and say, "Hey guys, I really need some help. Can you help me out?" Some parties are not going to let the conversation go any farther than that before their, weapons are drawn and they're just hacking the thing up and, okay, all right, go away. We gave it the office. We don't want it anymore. And send it on its way. The party is not the one that the Revenant is coming after. So if they destroy the Revenant, it's not likely that the Revenant's going to come after them. The Revenant is probably going to go try to find other means. But if you do have that kind of party that might lend an empathetic or sympathetic ear to an undead with a story of an unjust death and a need for revenge, then that's a valid way that you could put a Revenant into a campaign. All right. So how might we reskin the monster to make the Revenant something that is more applicable for when you need it? So this is when we look back to the 3rd edition Revenant and take inspiration from that template. So if you need a monster like a Revenant that's suitable for a party that is lower than level 3 or higher than level 7, you can adapt that 3rd edition Revenant template to the CR you want it to be to challenge your party. So basically look for, in 5th edition, look for a monster that is of an appropriate CR to challenge your party. And you want that monster to be a humanoid. And then kind of go take those little elements from the Revenant template in terms of some of the special abilities it gets, that paralyzing gaze, the extra damage against its victim, the fact that it's undead but can't be turned, the regeneration, those types of things, and add those on to the template of whatever the existing monster is, and then just sort of give it the look of an undead creature, and have that thing go after, if you're sending it after a member of the party who done something really bad, and now that has got some cosmic karma issues that it has to deal with. Well, put in something that's going to be a challenge to the party for that. Likewise, if it's a revenant that is pursuing an enemy that is of a maybe a slightly higher challenge rating than the party could face alone, you want to make this revenant a potential ally that is going to be able to help them in a fight, and not a rather weak enemy or a rather weak ally that the party is going to have to kind of do all the work. You want to give it some qualities that have it make sense for why this revenant is seeking out these party members, either for revenge or to assist in getting revenge against somebody who has wronged it. All right, and so that is going to conclude our main look at the Revenant. What I'd like to do now is go to the chat room here and find out what kind of questions Doors of Fear, Amish, Casino, or Fragile. Any of you guys have any questions on a Revenant, or when you might use it, why you might have one in your campaign, how you would throw it against a party? And while I'm waiting for you guys to decide, if you do have questions on that, I'm going to go on into the wrap up, then I'll come back and look at chat once again. All right, I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday, and tonight we have been talking about the Revenant, one of the most fun undead creatures in all of D&D. I stream 4 times a week. And I may be, in the next couple of weeks, I may be doing some additional unscheduled live streams, because there's a couple of things coming up in some of my games where it's not going to really be a spoiler for my players, but there's a few things I'm working on that I think might be of interest to other DMs out there in terms of how I'm putting together things for these games that I'm working on. The actual play games that I run every week, simulcast on Twitch and YouTube, are The Walker of Waterdeep. It's my 5th edition Planeswalking game, Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thursday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern is the 5th edition Sword Coast Chronicles game. And then Saturday night, it's our old school 2nd edition Saturday night Greyhawk game. That's Saturday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. As a programming note, the next 2 Saturday nights, the 14th and the 21st, we will not be having sessions because back-to-back Saturday night soccer games coming up that I will be in the stadium to watch those games. All right, you can find our live streams on both Twitch and YouTube, twitch.tv/Gallibond. You can find all of the archives of our streams and all of the other content that I create over on YouTube. And then we do have a Patreon for folks that may want to help us be able to create some more content. All right. Looks like, okay, so Doors of Fear asks, what would be the reason story-wise where this would make an appearance? All right, that really depends on you as the DM deciding that your characters have made a real blunder, I think. Okay, most of the games that I run are games with heroic heroic PCs. The PCs are, on a moral compass trying to do good. And an example where I could potentially see it happening in one of our games is if the PCs get tricked into believing that someone they are pursuing is evil and needs to be put to death, and they kill that person, and then they find out later, oh, gee, we killed an innocent person. But then they would also have to make in my game, they would have to then not try to go rectify that themselves. If they realized they had been had, they would have to make a conscious decision. Okay, we're not going to go back and deal with the person that misled us into going and killing that innocent person. We're just going to skip town and try to forget that ever happened. Okay, a case like that might be when a Revenant would start to come after somebody in the party. That's the kind of thing that I think would qualify a Revenant for. The other reason it might show up in a campaign is, again, it has to be a story-related reason that the Revenant is pursuing somebody that makes a difference to the party. So maybe there's a person that the party is aware of. They're not quite sure where that person stands in terms of the moral center of the universe. If somehow a Revenant approached them and they didn't just destroy it out of hand, the Revenant might reveal to them, hey, that person over there that you're not sure whether they're a good guy or a bad guy, well, let me tell you what they did to me and why I want to see them dead. And then when the party hears that, they may go, oh, yeah, that's a bad dude. That dude really deserves to die if they did that. So then that might get the party recruited as allies of the Revenant. But again, I don't know how many of my parties would, when they see an undead shambling up to them, would wait for it, would wait to find out whether it wants to sell them Avon or whether it wants to eat their brains. Weapons are probably coming out, spells are probably going off, and the Revenant wouldn't even get a chance to say, hi, my name is, before it's, just completely obliterated. So in my games, I would find, or at least in the current games I'm running, I would find it tricky to put a Revenant in the game one way or the other. Perhaps a future game, perhaps a game with different players or different characters that have different motivations, it might make more sense to do that. Okay. Yeah, exactly. It is a punish. It is definitely a punishment, and you might, you could also potentially see it intertwined with a storyline. Let's say there's a paladin, and a paladin has fallen from grace. A paladin has lost their powers from their deity, and that paladin is part of the party. And maybe the rest of the party, well, they know that something happened, but they're not quite sure what happened. Maybe the paladin just saw a barmaid at a bar, really took a shine to her. One thing led to another. Was back in the barmaid's bedchamber, and the barmaid's husband walked in on him. And so the paladin winds up killing the husband because the husband was going into a jealous rage. Well, then that husband might be coming after the paladin, and that might force an uncomfortable conversation between the paladin and the rest of the party. Oh, yeah, this is what I did. And that's why my deity won't answer my prayers anymore. Okay, well, now we got to deal with this, and then we got to go and deal with what you've done to see if we can get you back on the straight and narrow. So that would definitely be another sort of instance of where something could come in. But at this point in time, I don't see any of the characters in any of my games that would really, the way they're being played, that would go that direction. The motivations that the players have with these characters are not something that I would see happening. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming and hanging out this evening. I am going to bring the music back up, and I am going to go ahead and bring us over to the end credits. And a little reminder that all this month, the music that you're hearing on our streams is from Pipe Dream Hits. I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday, and I'm going to sign off as I always do by reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.